So it's the news nobody in Baton Rouge wanted to hear, but it's the harsh reality that LSU faces. Star All-American linebacker Harold Perkins Jr. suffers a torn ACL in Saturday's win over UCLA, and his 2024 season is over. But for the rest of the Bayou Bengals, 2024 is just getting underway. And so what direction does Brian Kelly, Blake Baker, and this Tiger defense turn to replace number 7? How do you make up for the impact lost by Perkins' absence? And is Perkins officially done now in Baton Rouge? Let's go ahead and discuss what's going on at SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification down below, and smash subscribe because this is your number one source for all things SEC moving forward. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels at SEC Unfiltered. If you want to keep up with me, have back and forth conversations, figure out what's going on in the world of college football, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter. And make sure you check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Use the Game Time app with the promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. LSU back home this weekend against South Alabama before welcoming in 2 weeks Ole Miss. Make sure that you go ahead and get those last-second tickets by using the Game Time app and the promo code SECU. $20 off on us. So I will look at this as an optimistic view. I am a glass half full type of person. The season is far from over. When you look at how there has been progress and potential for LSU, there is no reason down in the Bayou you need to be waving the white flag. There is no reason not to believe that Death Valley still can have that aura on a Saturday night that bodes well in favor of the Tigers. But from a football standpoint, this sucks. It absolutely sucks. And I know that there's going to be people out there that will tell me, when you look at the stat line, when you look at how Harold Perkins played, when you look at how he started the season, no sacks, 1.5 tackles for losses, 17 tackles. I get it. He was not off to the best start. Certainly nowhere near what we envisioned him when they brought in Blake Baker. Simply nowhere near he has ever reached since his freshman season. But it's more than that. And Brian Kelly made it abundantly clear after finding a way to come back down 17-0 at Williams-Brice Stadium, the most hostile atmosphere in all of college football that isn't compared to the great cathedrals of chaos. Harold Perkins disrupts the game with more than just tackles. And you saw that. The momentum shifted in favor of LSU when Sage Ryan came down, delivered the blitz against the Lenore Sellers, and it opened up a shot for number 7 to get the football. Fumble recovery. That's where you saw that momentum kind of finally bode well in favor of the Tigers. And he does so much for the game of football. I think the big thing that we all hate is that he's never been able to reach his full potential since really setting a standard as a rookie. When you think about his freshman year, how he was just everywhere at all times, making highlight play, countless 13 tackles for losses, 8 sacks his freshman season. On top of that, he also had multiple pass breakups, interceptions, forced fumbles. He was just that guy. He did it all. He was everything and more of what you wanted in a difference maker. And then last season, didn't get back to it. This year, they tried playing him at inside linebacker, never seemed to really pan out. But then when you get him back out on the edge, you realize that offensive coordinators are going to have fits. They're going to have mind games. They're going to be staying up late at night trying to figure out where number 7 is because he can do it all. Now, will that translate to the NFL? I don't know. But I'm not worried about the Sunday games. I'm worried about the Saturday showcase. And on Saturdays, when you have to convince an offensive line, a wide receiver room, a running back, an OC just in general to game plan around what number 7 can do as a blitzer, in coverage, to be able to play in space, that's a big deal. It is. And so for that standpoint, it sucks because if you like seeing the stars of Saturday that are gracing our television screens and our reasons why we pay attention to the game are out there. And it's not fun, and nobody's going to enjoy that. But the season's not over. I will say, at the start of the year, when I looked at LSU's roster, I thought there were 3 players that were completely irreplaceable. Number 1 was Garrett Nussmeier. Number 2 was Will Campbell. Number 3 was Harold Perkins. You could not afford to lose those guys, not because of their on-field play. For Garrett Nussmeier, it simply is he's the best quarterback that you have because of what he's learned over the last few years. For Will Campbell, on any given Saturday, my money, he is the best overall offensive tackle in the sport. And then for Harold Perkins, it's a brand new defense that honestly, I think we kind of undersell what his performance was the last 2 years because of how bad the defensive was underneath Matt House. Yet still, they were able to get to 10 wins, and you probably lost in translation several must-see plays because of just you were talking about the negatives surrounding it. the negatives surrounding this defense, why they couldn't reach their full potential. If you go back and you watch the film, there is so much to like about what a guy like Harold Perkins provides. And it stinks. And now we have to wonder, what does the future entail for him? Will he go to the NFL draft? Will he come back? And we'll get to that in a moment. But the here and now, everything is about what LSU does moving forward. There is some good news when it comes to this from a pass rushing standpoint. Simply from the impact of where the sack totals are going to be, I think LSU is in good hands. One of the more underlying traits that we have seen this year from the front seven is their ability to disrupt the quarterback. Braden Swinson, bet you don't know this right now, 5 sacks on the season. Savion Jones, 3.5 sacks on the season. They also have combined, I think it's 18 tackles for loss. So the front seven is getting back there. Keep this in mind also. 5-star defensive tackle Dominic McKinley had a big-time play. First major moment down in Death Valley against the Bruins offensive line. Comes in for a drive, gets a sack on this first drive. You're seeing him take that next step forward. And so you pair that alongside with Gio Pays, you pair that alongside with Amon Bro, you pair that alongside with Sean Washington, Paris Sean, whatever it is, you feel better. But now it comes down to, what do we do about that star position? So they initially started him out in the beginning of the year at the will linebacker spot. They thought it was going to be a good fit. It wasn't against USC. It really wasn't that great when it came against Nichols. So they moved him for the LSU game to the star spot. The South Carolina game to the star spot. And he was starting to get a little bit back into the rhythm of what we knew about number 7. So before that, Major Burns was actually playing that safety spot. So now he's going to go back all the way to he's going to go back to the star. And now you have to wonder, well, who steps up in safety? It has been a constant carousel, whether it be Jordan Gilbert, Sage Ryan, Deshaun Spears, Austin Osbury, whoever it is, they're going to have to step up. So from a skill standpoint, Major Burns is going to be your dude that you trust now in the Perkins position. He's going to be the guy that will have to play in coverage. He's going to be the guy that will have to blitz. He's going to be the guy that will have to be great in run support. He's going to be everything that Baker kind of builds around. That doesn't mean that it can't be effective, because of, again, when you see the front seven take that next step forward, when you see the way that the linebackers have played, when you see the way the cornerbacks have even kind of impressed at times, you're okay with him being there. Now, it is going to be a little different on how offensive coordinators scheme around him, but that gives you your best bet. From the leadership aspect, you have to realize that it's almost impossible, I think, to replace a Harold Perkins. It is. From one entity. There's not one player that will be able to go ahead and re-put on the aura of number 7 come Saturday afternoons. There's not. You can't say that it's going to be Major Burns. You can't say that it's going to be Jordan Gilbert. You can't say that it's going to be PJ Woodland. You can't say that it's going to be Greg Penn. Every single one of them is going to have to take on that mantle. All are going to have to play cohesively. And more importantly, they're all going to have to hold each other accountable. Because Blake Baker, when he came in, realized that I may not have all the pieces. I may only have a few bits and nuts and bolts here, but I do have the engine. That's Harold Perkins. I can build my defense around him. I can find ways to make sure that as long as he is getting in space, as long as he is consistently finding drives, as long as he is consistently being the one that is the X factor, offense coordinators are going to have fits preparing for us. And that might give us a shot. That might give us a chance. But the leadership part, everyone else has got to step up. And this is why I'm saying that I don't believe the season is over down in the Bayou. It shouldn't. This is still LSU. LSU still is one of the premier programs when it comes to bringing in talent. It still is one of the premier programs when it comes to developing talent. And Brian Kelly, the thing that nobody wants to discuss after what we saw this past offseason, where he didn't go swing big to go ahead and land a Dominic Williams, to go ahead and land a Simeon Barrow, to go ahead and land any one of those Michigan State players, the one that went to Oregon, he realized that I still have LSU. I still have the branding. I still am this type of person. And we need to get back to the LSU ways. They have to. And that comes with establishing dominance, but more importantly, technique. And so I've already preached this all offseason. When it comes to the teachers, sometimes that's more important than the students. You may be able to have an A+ student that will stay an A+ student, but you may also have a C+ student that can't get past his own way and is failing. But when you have a great teacher, he can turn a C+ student into a B or into even an A-. And so far, you look at what you've gotten from Blake Baker, from what you've gotten in Bo Davis, from what you've gotten in Corey Raidman, they've done that. They've been able to step up. LSU is not the laughingstock of the SEC. It's not great. There's certainly a ton of question marks moving into conference play where if you play the way you did against Nichols, the way that you played at times against UCLA and USC, you're not walking away with a win. But it can get better. It can. And the schedule still bodes well in your favor to say, we can get the marquee wins. I'll tell you what, yes, USC is probably not going to be a top 15 team by the season's end, but they could. They certainly are looking like the part of being a top 10 win, so that loss is actually pretty decent. I think South Carolina's defense is going to keep them in games, so maybe that ends up being a better win than advertised. Ole Miss, Arkansas being the wild card that they are, Texas A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma, depending on what they are. Vanderbilt, the toughest out, the spoiler of the SEC for 2024. You can still have the resume that bodes well for you, even if you don't make it down to Atlanta to make it to the college football playoff. And you're LSU. You have that entity. You should. But everyone's got to step up. Everyone. From the coaching, you have to be able to scheme on what works and what doesn't. You have to realize that Harold Perkins was one of one. He was an anomaly. So what worked for him may not work for Major Burns. It may not work with you having to play more of a Sage Ryan. It may not work with you having to play a Deshaun Spears or Jordan Gilbert. You may have to game plan differently if you're Blake Baker, and that's okay. If you're Greg Penn, you got to be able to step up and be more effective when it comes to the run support. If you're Major Burns, you got to be able to be a high-profile blitzer coming off of the edge, and you got to be able to play in space and certainly in coverage. If you are a Deshaun Spears, welcome to LSU. You may be a freshman. You're not going to be able to act like it. If you are a guy like Jordan Gilbert, you may know what the SEC is all about from your time at Texas A&M, but that does not give you a reason to go ahead and play down to the level of competition. It's not. And you can't. You can't afford that if you're LSU. But the season is not over. There's still plenty that you can look forward to going into 2024, including still a spot in the college football playoff. You finally found a run game. Is it going to be hit and miss at times? Is it sporadic? Yes, but there's a run game. You like your wide receivers. You know that Garrett Nussmeier is doing everything possible to go ahead and deliver clean strikes and easy drives. Aaron Anderson has stepped up. You've watched Kyron Lacey, Mason Taylor, Xavion Thomas, Kyle Parker. You got guys. This is all just everyone taking that next step forward. And it comes on both sides. It's not just players on the defense. It's also the offense being stimulously meticulous with their opportunities to strike and making sure that they give their defense time to breathe. They can do that. They can't. Now, what about Harold Perkins moving forward? Here's the really interesting case. This will be one of the major studies that we see in college football now with NIL. So Perkins, the good news is on both ends for LSU and his NFL draft stock, being hurt this early in the season is not going to probably affect him for week one of the NFL season. So if he were to go ahead and get to the NFL Combine, he may not be at 100%, but suffering a torn ACL in the middle of September is not the same as suffering it in November. It's not the same as suffering it in December in the SEC championship or in the college football playoff, like a Jameson Williams. Their seasons were done before they even started at the NFL. So he will be able to probably keep some of that draft stock at an all-time high. The right coordinator will be able to work with him, find that next niche home, and he'll probably end up having a great career. Maybe not as the same way that we once envisioned, but he still can be an overall solid linebacker. But in the style of NIL, what's going to be really interesting is, can they sell him to come back for another year? Because now with only playing 4 games, he would medically redshirt, and he would be able to keep a year of eligibility. So on top of that, you also would be able to see him maybe be told, we know what's best for you. We're going to get you in with the right people. We're going to pay you what you believe is your value in NIL funds. That way we can keep you around for another season. You get to be the leader of our defense with a more established unit, a more veteran cohesive unit, an overall balance of where we believe that we are taking those next steps in the right direction. Blake Baker's not going anywhere. It's very clear that we got young guys like Dominic McKinley's not going anywhere. We got guys like Deshaun Spears who isn't going anywhere. We feel really good about maybe a Tylen Singleton coming and taking that next step forward. You be that commander-in-chief. The number 7 still belongs to you. I'm going to be really interested to see what LSU can do, because now in the era of NIL, if you don't like where your draft stock is, there is no reason not to consider coming back. And at a place like LSU, you absolutely can benefit the most from learning underneath a guy like Baker, get the reps, and take that next step forward as you look to build yourself as still a day one prospect. I don't want to spend any more time on this, but I will say, LSU fans, the sky is not falling. It is not a Category 5 concern. You still have the best ahead of you. You still can be a team that finds a way to turn the direction. And if you are Harold Perkins, you got a tough call to make. Do you want to come back? Do you want to go to the NFL? And for those who also are going to talk about Harold Perkins and what he didn't do, just remind yourself about what he did do. One of the major reasons why Brian Kelly in year one was able to lead his Tiger team to an SEC championship. Throughout the flaws, the trials, the tribulations, and more importantly, the bad malarkey plays, there was a diamond in the rough, still making a highlight after highlight must-see moment. That was 2023. Things were turning the corner for him. And maybe the numbers won't back it up right now, but I promise you it would have. LSU, you still have a good shot to go ahead and control your destiny. This stings, but it's not the end of the world. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are your overall thoughts about what direction LSU must turn to? Make sure that also you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Check out me at Mr. Cole Thompson and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks. Later.